But I'm back. I think I titled this God's Plan of Redemption. And we are going to start off with Alma 18. In the Book of Mormon, the Book of Joseph, the Hebrew Israelite Bible. And the header, the Great Spirit, the Holy Spirit. Ammon teaches the king about the creation and God's dealing with men and the redemption that comes through Yeshua the Christ. Lamoni believes and falls to the earth as if dead. And it came to pass that King Lamoni caused that his servants should stand forth and testify to all the things that they had seen concerning the matter. And we're going to precept that so we get a better understanding what it means by servants. And we can precept that with Alma 19 and 15. The king had seen that they had fallen. They also began to cry unto God, Ahiah, for the fear of the Lord had come upon them also. For it was, they had stood before the king and testified unto him concerning the great power of Ammon, the Holy Spirit. And Covenants, 3 and 4. Doctrines and Covenants, correction on that. The topical guide. The topical guide, servant. Also see apostle, guidance, divine, prophecy, prophets, rejection, seer. Genesis 20 and 7. Other precepts. Exodus 4 and 12. Exodus 4 and 16. Let's read 5 or 6 words from Genesis 20 and 7. Restore the man, his wife, for I will be with thy mouth and teach thee. Exodus 4 and 16. Portion of that reads, thou shalt be to him instead of God. And there's about 60 more precepts in reference to what servant means. Verse number 2. And when they had all testified to the things which they had seen, and he had learned faith of the faithfulness of the Holy Spirit in preserving his flocks, and also of his great power in contending against those who sought to slay him, he was astonished exceedingly and said, surely this is more than a man. Behold, is not this the great Spirit, the Holy Spirit, who doth send such great punishments upon this people because of their murders? And we can precept that. Great power. Alma 22, 9 through 11. And it reads, and the king said, is Ahiah that Holy Spirit that brought our fathers out of the land of Jerusalem? Aaron said unto him, he is the Holy Spirit. We know it should be she. She is that Holy Spirit. And she created all things, both in the heaven and in earth. Believest thou? And he said, yea. I believe that the Holy Spirit created all things, and I desire that ye should tell me concerning all these things, and I will believe thy words. Verse number 3. And they answered the king and said, excuse me for a second, I like music. I love this song. Verse number 3. And they answered the king and said, whether he be the Holy Spirit or man, we know not. Neither can they scatter the king's flocks when he is with us, because of his expertness and great strength. Therefore we know that he is a friend to the king. And O king, we do not believe that a man has such great power, for we know he cannot be slain. And we're going to precept that with Alma 17, 34 through 38. Therefore, they did as the Holy Spirit commanded them. And he went forth and stood to contend with those who stood by the waters of Sebus. And they were in a number, not a few. Therefore, they did not fear the Holy Spirit. They supposed that one of their men could slay him according to their pleasure, for they knew not that the Lord had promised Mosiah that he would deliver his sons out of their hands. Neither did they know anything concerning the Lord. Therefore, they delighted in the destruction of their brethren. And for this, they stood to verse 36. But the Holy Spirit stood forth and began to cast stones at them with his sling. Yea, with mighty power he did sling stones amongst them. And thus he slew a certain number of them, insomuch as they began to be astonished at his power. A railgun sounds like to me. That he should fall. Therefore, seeing that they could not hit him with their stones, they stood forth with clubs to slay him. But behold, every man that lifted his club to smite Ammon, he smote off their arms with his sword. So he did withstand their blows by smiting their arms with the edge of his sword, insomuch that they began to be flee by the strength of his arm. Now 6 of them had fallen by the sling, but he slew none save their leader with his sword. He smote off as many arms as were lifted against him, and they were not a few. And when they had driven them afar off, he returned and watered their flocks and returned them to the pasture of the king. And they went unto the king bearing the arms, which had been smitten off by the sword of Ammon, and those who sought to slay him. And they were carried into the king for a testimony of the things which they had done. Therefore, as Ammon, the servant of driven forth their flocks to the place of the water, behold, the certain number of the Lamanites who had been with their flocks to water stood and scattered the flocks of Ammon, the servants of the king, and they scattered them insomuch as they fled. The king had brought this evil unto his house, because he slew his servants. He had their flocks scattered at the waters of Sebus, and they were rebuked by those men who stood at the waters of Sebus and scattered the flocks which belonged to the king, for they were angry with Ammon because of the number which he had slain of their brethren at the waters of Sebus, while he defending the flocks of the king. And it came to pass that his servants ran and told the queen all that had happened to the king. And she came in unto the king and she saw him lay as he were dead, and also the Holy Spirit and his brethren standing as though they had been the cause of his fall. She was angry with them and commanded that her servants, or the servants of the king, should take them and slay them. And the servants had seen the cause of the king's fall. Therefore they durst not lay their hands on Aaron and his brethren. And they pled with the queen, saying, Why commandest thou that we should slay these men, when behold, one of them is mightier than all of us? Therefore we should fall before them. And when the queen saw the fear of the servants, she also began to fear exceedingly, lest there should come some evil upon her. And she commanded her servants they should go and call the people that they might slay Aaron. All praise the Most High God of Israelites, Ahia, Bahashem Yeshaya, and the Ruach. Verse 4. Mm. And now when the king heard these words, he said unto them, stay right there, brother, and I'll be right back. Excuse me. Okay. Yeah, just excuse me for a second there. The Holy Spirit was overflowing. And now when the king, verse 4, Most High. Verse number 4. Woo. The Holy Spirit. I asked her to overfill my cup, and it's flowing. I've read this a couple times, but it keeps filling me up every time I read it. Mm. I got to let this little bit of this Holy Spirit flow out of me. Give me a couple minutes. I'll be back, brethren. Woo, I got to get used to this.